Australian Environmental Accounting Platform. My name is Chioma Igwenagu, and I'm the Natural Capital Advisor for Central West Local Land Services. It is great to have you all join us today. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands we're meeting from today and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Please feel free to type where you're joining from today. I'm joining from Dobbo, which is a Wiradjuri country here in New South Wales. Everyone, please feel free to type that in the chat if you would like to. This event is also recorded, and please, we do recognize that some people have not indicated to be recorded. Please, if you're happy to turn off your recording, and the recording will be provided to all participants that registered after this event and can also be found on our socials as well. So today's session is all about demonstrating how to use AIA EAP tool for your on-farm emission accounting. This is the first part of the event, and we would like to use this event to gauge interest. So please do let us know in the survey that will be shared after this, whether you would like us to invite you for a face-to-face demonstration, which will be tailored more to your farm data. This event today is organized by Central West LLS through our Natural Capital Support Services program. So we are running this event in collaboration with the On-Farm Carbon Advice team from the Department of Primary Industry and Regional Development, DPIRD. Our team, the Natural Capital team, support landholders with events, one-on-one tailored advice relating to natural capital and environmental market opportunities. So I've said before that we'll be recording this event, and we hope to share with all participants after this, and also we will be posting it on our YouTube channel. So please look out for this as well. We are joined today by Lisa McFadyen, who is the coordinator of On-Farm Carbon Advice team with the DPIRD, and Marja Simpson, research officer with also On-Farm Carbon Advice team. Both of them will be demonstrating how the tool will be used. And I'm also joined by Melanie Moeller, our community engagement officer, and Larissa Spitelli, our senior land services officer within the NRM team here in LLS. Both of them helped us plan this event. So thank you all for your collaboration on this. So I will now hand over to Lisa, and who will take us through this demonstration. Lisa and Marja, I mean, in a moment. And in just a few housekeeping. This webinar will run for 30 to 40 minutes, and we encourage you to pop in your questions in the chat at any time. We will do our best to attend to all of them one after another. And after the event, we'll open the floor for 5 to 10 minutes for questions and thoughts. And feel free to raise your hand, and we'll call you for questions and answer at the time. I will hand over to Lisa and Marja now, who will take us through this demonstration. Thank you all.
Thanks, Chi, and thank you, Central West LLS, for having us today. As you can see on screen, the topic that we're talking about is about knowing your on-farm emission numbers, and how we actually undertake that is using the Australian the Agricultural Innovation Australia EAP platform. That's an environmental accounting platform. And what we use this platform for is to analyse on-farm emissions that your farm has. We look at sequestration also that you might be having on farm. And then we actually develop farm carbon management plans. This is part of a big delivery of our on-farm carbon advice project that we, within New South Wales Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development. It's actually a joint initiative between DQ and DPIRD, and so it's the PIPAP program, the Primary Industries and Productivity Abatement program. So we just want to recognise where our funding's coming from. So the agenda for today, we're just going to give you a bit of a highlight about what the on-farm carbon project advice is about, what activities we actually run. Farm carbon management plans are just a pillar of our project delivery. We're going to go through the demonstration of the EAP tool, but also the steps and requirements if you do decide to go and undertake a farm carbon management plan, and how you can participate that. So on screen, you'll see Marja Simpson. She is also involved in the farm carbon management plans with our team. Marja will go through a demonstration of the tool, but we just thought we'll give you a bit of a highlight of the project. As you can see on screen, there's 4 core pillars with our project. We've been running for 3 years now. We finish in June 26, but what we're really about is education and training. It's about raising awareness of what's happening in the carbon space, and we deliver this through carbon farming fundamental workshops. As you can see on screen, we do our farm carbon management plans. We're undertaking a lot of demonstration sites. So what we want to really deliver is that we know that there's low emissions agriculture type activities producers can participate in on farm, and that's what we're demonstrating. So anything from green urea to livestock emission reduction type strategies as well. And we also have our community of practice and website where we share a lot of information, papers and science backed research of what's happening in the carbon space to support lower emissions environment. So I guess from our program with the delivery over the last 3 years, there's been a lot of confusion in the carbon space, both positive and negative. And I guess I just really want to highlight that by undertaking knowing your emission numbers on farm, is that just putting a line in the sand of where to start, of what activities you can do on farm, knowing what your position is and making those decisions and opportunities of what can come forward for your property. So with the positive, like we know that there's been a lot of ACU projects. We're not just about ACU projects, we're about insetting on farm as well and what activities that you can do on farm. Chi mentioned the natural capital, like there's a lot of avenues there. And I guess in the negative, a lot of media sort of jumped on board with the changes that are happening within the carbon and a lot of vegetation delivery out western properties. But we'd like to think that with this carbon confusion that we're trying to highlight to farmers the positive attributes, and just understanding those on-farm emissions is an important step for that. So on screen, I just really want to highlight there's lots of influences that is happening on farm. These influences are coming from a global government supply chain and consumer level. From the global, like we've got our commitment with the Paris Agreement. From government, we've had our commitments for net zero by 2050. That is under review, but at the moment our commitments that is for lower emissions. All these impacting on our farm. But what's really coming through over the last 3 years is that the supply chain is starting to ask for emissions numbers for producers. They have to start doing mandatory reporting for their businesses at the moment for the climate related risk reporting, and also the corporates within that supply chain have got a lot of commitments for net zero by 2050. So that's anywhere from grain, large corporates to even your beer companies to your large ag resellers. And what we're seeing to consumers for a while have been sort of favouring sort of carbon neutral products, but also producers going into the EU markets are also seeing different avenues where they have to report their emission numbers. As you can see on slide, that's where we see this in the supermarket. A lot of product is being labelled with carbon neutral. That's really driven by the consumers. That's where a lot of the large ag reseller supermarkets are sort of tailoring there. But what we want to see, what we're really seeing is this market-driven activity. We know that with the EU, with the canola markets, we also know with the wool industry as well, that there's a lot more emissions intensity reporting happening, and also within the dairy industry. So the key component today is talking about our farm carbon management plans and how we use this EAP tool to deliver these plans. What I really want to highlight is that every farm is different and unique, and they all have different greenhouse gas sort of profiles for their emissions. As you can see on screen, we've got dairy, rangeland, beef and grains. And as you can see that they have different profiles of different emissions on farm. As you can see with dairy, one of the larger component of that is enteric methane because of the large livestock numbers, also with the rangeland beef. But as you see in the grains, we start seeing a lot more emissions coming from your fertiliser and ag chem. And it just shows that every system is different. There's no right and wrong system here, but it's just understanding what your numbers are of emissions on farm and how we sort of explain what's happening and understanding the emissions intensity, so then we can have that preferential buying in the markets where they're actually looking at low emission product going forward. So why do we undertake these farm carbon management plans? Like we're seeing, as I mentioned before, there's a lot more pressure to reduce our carbon footprint. By doing these profiles, we really want farmers and producers to understand what their total emissions are on farm, but also their net emissions. And as I mentioned before, an important number is their emissions intensity. We really just want to track the impact of how your emissions change year to year. Often this is influenced by climatic conditions. So when we have dry periods, we can actually see that show up in emissions numbers as well. We really want to identify what the opportunities are for farmers, whether that's a carbon or an environmental market. So that's where it comes down to your motivation. Is it market access that you're looking at? Is it just purely your co-benefits, your productivity benefits? Is it environmental stewardship markets that you're looking at? But we also know, like, there's opportunity within the banking sector where they're starting to look at green loans and bonds, and we can leverage finance and also have a supply chain advantage. I'll now hand over to Marja, and she'll be talking about the farm carbon management plans more.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So on the slide here, there's a bit of a snapshot of our farm carbon management plans. So there are a few components part of this management plan. So first one is the greenhouse gas emissions audit for 12-month period using the EAP platform. And we put the outputs from that profile also together in a bit of a report for you. So there's a snapshot here on screen, and part of our carbon management plan that includes also a section on current and emerging greenhouse gas emissions avoidance or reductions management strategies, and also some strategies that look at carbon sequestration from on-farm vegetation or soil. And the map here just shows you the producers that we worked across the state so far from different production systems. Next slide, please, Lisa. And yeah, on this screen here, we've got an output from your EAP tool, and which we'll also include in the report document for you. So first of all, when you sort of do your assessment, your farm data entry, then the results will include like an overview of your total greenhouse gas emissions. For usually the assessment's done on a 12-month period. So some producers prefer the financial year or a calendar year. But yeah, usually it's done on a 12-month time period. And so total emissions include your net emissions are made up of your total emissions. And if there's sequestration, that's a reduction. And then you come up with your net emissions. And so the profile, there's a categorization that some of you might have already come across. It's called scopes, and there's scope 1, 2, and 3. And scope 1 includes everything that happens directly on farm. So that's emissions from your livestock or emissions from your cropping side of the farms, and your fertilizer inputs, your fuel inputs. That's part of the scope 1 category. Scope 2 only includes grid electricity usage, and usually therefore the smallest component. And scope 3 includes things like that you need on farm, but you're getting them, like let's say your supplement feed that you sort of need on farm, but you're purchasing that to farm. So that includes, for example, agrochemicals, your supplement feed, or also if you're purchasing livestock, that also then is part of scope 3. So you get the overall output, and then you can also have the option of getting the detailed breakdown. So so you can see on the right-hand side of the slide what all these categories are made up of. Like, for example, you've got your like in the livestock systems, enteric methane will usually be a big part. In some systems, in particular livestock trading systems, the scope 3 from purchased livestock can also take up quite a bit of your emissions profile. But another important metric is to look at is the emissions intensity, and that is it's a unit that also allows comparison with like how you range compared to other businesses, and provides you and you can, there's sort of industry ranges that are available. So that's an important metric to establish versus total emissions or net emissions. They're not a great metric to compare yourself with because it's unique to what happens on the farm. So each farm, like Lisa already outlined, is different. So yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so what we want to cover today is that important step is to get to know your on-farm emission numbers. And I think that leads us then to now providing you a bit of a demonstration of the environmental accounting platform. So this slide here just shows you a screenshot of what the web page looks like. And there is a web address that will take you to the page. And in the corner of the right-hand side, that's where you sort of set up your login, which is quite quick, only requires an email address, and then I will send you like a code for login to your email address. And maybe I share my screen now to show you some of the main data entry requirements. Oh, oops, I'm not sharing this one. So yeah, like I said, this is sort of the starting page. And so this will take you to the next stage, which I've got set up here. So this is what you'll see once you've sort of entered your email address and set up your account. And then you've got these buttons here and properties. So if you were to click on this, it would, because I've already got property set up, it will take you to this page here. So when you first start, the first step is to define where your property is. So as an example, we thought we're using the Condobolin Agricultural Research Station. So this is a mapping, quite an interesting mapping feature, and all you have to do is type in your address and it will zoom to it. So if I potentially just zoom out, it will find it quite quickly. So here we go. It then sort of comes up and it will zoom to that. So and by clicking on each polygon, you can define your farm boundary. So I've already selected the relevant ones here. And you can also download your boundary as a mapping file, which can come in handy for some other on-farm mapping programs. This component here is important to select what happens on the farm. So I've selected beef pasture because that's relevant for grazing cattle systems or grazing sheep, or if there's any cropping happening, you would select cropping grains. Also pasture you would also select that if you, let's say, have maybe do a improved pasture where you put out some fertilizer or some agrochemicals, so you select that one as well. And planting refers to if you have any on-farm vegetation that you might have established, like for shelter belts, for example, so that sits under here. And another important selection to make is your rainfall selection, if you're sitting above or below 600 millimeters. And then on the right on the bottom is always the save or confirmation button. So then once you've done that, you get to this view here. So on your left-hand side, you have the data entry side of things, and the cloud with greenhouse gas emissions this is where your results will show up once you've entered some data. So we thought we take you through some data entry, how that works, and then once we've compiled some data, we'll then show you the output. So because I've selected the pasture beef, so I've got a line for the cattle to enter, and I've selected sheep and goats as well, so that's why I've got a line here. And then I've selected the cropping and a pasture and some tree planting, so these lines show up for some data entry. And so I've done already a bit of pre-entry just to save some time, so that's why I've already got like this here, versus if I wouldn't have had any entries, it would look more like 0 goat herds, for example. But then you've got 3 tabs here. So your on-farm activities happen on the first tab, and then in the middle tab you enter your electricity usage and also your fuel and any supplement feed that you might buy. And then the third tab is where you allocate, let's say if you use your fuel and you have cattle and sheep and do some cropping, so you have to partition up, for example, your fuel use to the different production activities that are happening. So that happens here, but we'll get to that. So maybe we'll just do some data entry now. So let's say if you're running some cattle, so you this is when you press this button here, it will if I just press that now, it will take you to this screen. So you'll just provide the label and your starting period. So you for the whole data entry, you sort of select the same 12-month time period, but I might cancel that and go to the one that I've already labeled. So it's with labeling, you would just choose something that means something to you. So I'll just call it DPIRD and then put the year against it. And so this is the 12 months time period, the last financial year that I've just chosen. So then this will bring you to this page where you have some age categories. So they might, which you might have in a breeding system. So let's say we've got some breeding cows and some calves, and I've just got some example data and maybe some steers and maybe some bulls. So you would just toggle on what would apply to your system. And let's enter some data. So then that will, the pencil is always will open the data entry. And so then within the 12 months time period in the livestock system, this goes on a monthly basis. And so first column is the number of animals that you have. So in a breeding system, we might have cows. So it's a small place. We might have 100 breeding cows, and they're pretty even on their weight. So that's the column for the weight here. And so so they don't shift much in their weight. So we'll just say, or this column here is the average daily life weight gain. So we'll just go with a pretty even weight for now. So then you've got a column here, changes from births, deaths, and aging, and another column for changes, sales, or purchases. So sometimes like you might age some animals in from like the younger groups. So the older heifers might join this herd. So this is how you would do that in this column. So we might just, and then so you have the option to label it. So we're just calling it maybe aged in, and maybe we'll say we have 20 moving in, and we have to set a weight for them. So they might be a bit younger, so we'll maybe give them 450. And so so you have 2 options here. So calculate total, you just put the weight per animal in here, and then it will calculate the weight for the 20 animals, and you save, and then it will appear here, and there's the addition of the 20 cows. And so yeah, so this column is for transactions, so only sales or purchases. And like I said earlier, a purchase is important to detail that. That's part of your scope 3, or a sale is important for you to calculate the emissions intensity. So the emissions that are associated with the production of a kilo of lightweight the product, and that's important for getting an indication how you're sort of sitting compared to an industry range. So if you were to enter a sale, say here, that's, you've got your sale button is selling 10, and there's roughly 500. And so yeah, it's important. This is the value that will go into the emissions intensity calculation. And then yeah, you get the minus, and it gets tracked on your monthly number of animals. So that's the one of the data entries for your breeding cows. And then right on the bottom of the screen is the save button, and then that will take you back to your starting herd. So we might maybe enter some calves. So let's say we enter them here. So because they get born throughout the year, so maybe we have to use in this case the change from births, deaths, or aging. So this column, and they are, for example, we give them the births label, and we have maybe let's say, I don't know, 70 are born, and there are maybe a starting weight of 50. And here we go. So we have them appearing then in our livestock sort of inventory system. And that's your calves entered. And obviously there is a live weight gain. So you then would adjust that to, oh, I haven't given them actually a weight. Yes, I need to say how heavy they are. And is that Lisa, can you help me out? Is that a reasonable daily live weight gain?
Yeah, I think the clear thing is you can either manually enter in your live weight, or you can use the default value of the average live weight gain that the system has. So I think you entered it in the October, so I think it reflected then from the October period.
Okay, good, thank you. Well, that's where, yeah, and if you need to adjust that to make it fit your system, then you would edit this in each of the months. So let's go with that for now. Yeah, and then you go back and you complete this data entry for your herd, and that's your livestock data entry. So let's have a look at the crops, what data requirements are required there. So I've entered a line here for wheat, and I've already pre-filled it. So it will ask you, the first step is what's the area. So we're saying 600, and the yield that we harvested was 4.5 tons per hectare. And then I will make a calculation. Again, this is important for emissions intensity for a ton of wheat, and it was not irrigated, and the stubble wasn't burnt. So and yeah, so either of those are important because they will influence how the emissions are calculated. So we save done. Well, haven't changed anything. So, and then so under how was the soil improved, this is where you have the option to add some fertilizer or lime. So I've already have a line here for urea. So the pencil is always your data entry place. So yeah, it's just you've got to give it a label, month of application, and in this case you have some pre-filled options here of very common fertilizers. So let's go with urea, and it will by default put in the percentage of nitrogen, and then it will use that value to calculate your per hectare, so kilo per hectare. Let's say, what are we using? Maybe something like this. And so sometimes in some cases your application area might be different to your whole crop area. So I've set up here, we set 600. So it will make the calculation based on the whole area. But if I were to say application area was different, type that in, then it will actually calculate the per hectare area based on that, which is also important to enter because it will calculate the amount of emissions based on your application area. And agrochemicals is the third step. And I've just, again, if you add the pencil here, you have again some pre-filled options. No, looks different. Yeah, here we go. So yeah, we're giving it a label. So you've got 3 categories here under, and in cropping system you probably have all 3 of those quite often. So for now we just choose herbicides, and you've got some common products here. If something is not on the list, you can also do click other. If you choose one, it comes up with the percentage. If you click other, you have to enter the active ingredient percentage of the product. So based on this active ingredient, you have to enter your amount of herbicide applied. So maybe something like this. And again, you have the option of application area different to the actual area. And save, it will add it in here. So that's data entries for the crop, for example. And I've also made an entry for pasture improvement, and I've entered a tree planting area in here. So the data entry looks quite similar on a tree planting area. So what it will ask is the total areas in hectares. So for an example here, we've planted 10 hectares. And yeah, so in this system, it's just got very broad regions. So you sort of select the one that fits to your location. And you've got 2 soil types to choose. And usually it's in terms of a shelter belt situation, it's usually a mixed species of environmental plantings. So I've chosen that, and the trees are 10 years old. And based on the 10 years of age and the total area, it will work out what the potential sequestration is from those from that area that was planted. So that's sort of the most of the some common data entries in terms of your livestock and cropping. And then moving to the second tab, so you'll have so if there's electricity, that sits on this line. And then for fuel, yeah, you have the options of diesel or petrol or LPG as well, and your commodity sits under here. So, and again, data entry is pretty similar to the others, what we've already done. So a label, your 12-month period that you're assessing, and yeah, so we're using non-renewable electricity and the amount of kilowatt hours that were used throughout the 12 months period. And so fuel looks similar. So it will just ask you for a total amount of diesel in liters for the 12 months. And under supplements, feeds, it's a bit limited. So we've got 3 options, but probably those are the most common ones. But as the system develops, there we'll be probably adding some other options there. And then let's have a look at the third tab, the allocation to enterprises. So because we entered, well, we've got oats that we bought, that's why that shows up here. Then we've got our electricity and our lots of fuels, and we've got the activities of the cropping and the pastures and the tree planting. So we've got to allocate that to, if I choose this one here, I've allocated to the beef because that's, yeah, the supplement feed for it. So we're calling it 100%. And so with, we're splitting it up, electricity between, well, half and half. Yeah, so so how you're allocating that depends on your, what happens on your farm. And sequestration, we need to allocate that. Sorry, wrong tab. Oh, I've split it up between, some of it will go to, some of the sequestration will benefit the herd and some of it benefits the cropping. And so that's the data entry. And so once you've completed all of that, then it will take you to, you can look up your results, which happens on this cloud. So it will take you to this page. And sometimes it doesn't take this long. Sometimes it just appears. So first, it will always ask you to enter your time period that you considered. So I've considered the last financial year. So we'll send that. And so then you have the options of, so all enterprises. So that's the broad overview for what happens on your farm. So you've got your scope 1, 2, and 3, and then a bit of sequestration, and then totals that all up into your net emissions. And this pie chart here is just breaking it up into the 3 main gases. And if you have livestock, the methane takes up usually the biggest part of the pie chart. And then on this button here, you can then look into your, so because we entered some cattle, well, there'll be nothing here because I didn't do the data entry, and we can have a look at the breakdown. So let's have a look at crops, for example. And if you have multiple crops, then you can select this here, but I only entered a wheat crop. So so the emissions for the wheat crop, so we've got scope 1, a bit of 2 because we put electricity to it, and scope 3 from agrochemicals and manufacturing of fertilizers, for example. And down here, if you scroll down, this is sort of the fine detail. So you can sort of look up, let's say 73 ton came from the CO2 part of the urea usage on farm. And then there's that also creates some some nitrous oxide emissions from part of the cropping residues cycle. Scope 3 is from the herbicide that we applied. That's the part that comes from the electricity. And down here, if you scroll down right to the bottom, this is where then you'll have your emissions intensity. And because we attributed some sequestration from the trees that we planted, so it will give you 2 values, one excluding sequestration and one including sequestration. And then this value will give, you can use that and have a look what some of the industry ranges are, which, yeah, you have to take into account that regions differ as well. So that will also then be reflected in your emissions intensity. And that really is the use of the EAP tool. And I might just maybe stop share my screen, and maybe Lisa, do you want to add anything, or anyone else?
Thanks for that, Maya. I think the clear message is with the data entry, it's actually not overwhelming, but I think the biggest thing is that it's just a starting point to know what your emissions are on farm as well, and look at that data. Is it going to be a calendar year or a financial year? A lot of landholders or producers have selected financial year just so it coincides with their BAS, like they might collect quarterly or just look at it annually. We suggest probably annually, like we don't necessarily need to do the data entry throughout the year, particularly a lot of those data, like with the livestock and whatnot, can be on an annual basis. And I think too, the important point to point out with this EAP tool is that we understand that data privacy is really important for landholders, and we want you to own your data, and how you choose what you do with that data is your decision. So what we actually do is we get the landholder to sign up with their own email address. There's actually permissions within this tool where they can allow us access. And so by allowing that access, they can boot us out at any time. So we just demonstrate how to use the tool, show how to use the, do all the data entry, look at the emission numbers, explain what the numbers mean, and then they have the opportunity to take us out of that permission base, and they have the decision whether they continue doing the data entry on an annual basis. They have the opportunity to share it to anyone, so whether it's their accountant, banker, whoever consultant that they might be dealing with as well. So it has been a really good tool to use, because it's a big step up from what the Excel spreadsheets we were initially using for the greenhouse gas accounting framework. So less error, and there's multi-commodities that you can enter too. One of the big key messages too from doing the data entry is a lot of farmers feel a little bit overwhelmed when they get their total emissions number or their net emissions numbers on farm. But when we actually explain and look at the emissions intensity, that's where they can actually see where they sit in comparison to other commodities within the same region or other areas of the state, and gives it more comfort. And there's actually a strong correlation between productivity too in those emissions intensity numbers. So I think if you look at it that way, it's actually a strong tool to use within your business. So the next slide that we're just going to talk about is those key messages. So I guess our message today is to start measuring and recording these data requirements that we talked about. Really important to know your livestock numbers, but the livestock weights and those gains, particularly at sale or disposal. Knowing your numbers will give you emission reduction strategies that you do on farm. What we recognise is most producers are doing best practice anyway. They get rid of their culls that are, they cull any of their empties if they're not joining. A lot of the cropping is really interesting, like using, optimising your fertiliser use. So a lot of it's business as usual that farmers are doing. It's just this is the data supporting those business decisions. What we want to do is really identify the opportunities for the environmental and carbon markets, if there's that there, or is it in setting, and is it market access that producers were looking at for their commodities. Really understanding what the co-benefits are is with that linkage between productivity, profitability and business efficiency. And what we really want everyone to possibly look at is just to start considering undertaking a farm carbon management plan. And this is our last slide, but we just want to have a call to action that if anyone is interested in participating and wanting to learn the EAP tool and how the data entry can be done for your particular farm, we're happy to help. Myself, we've got our carbon email on screen. I'm sure that LLS will be able to distribute that. And yeah, if you're interested, we're happy to offer like 5 free farm carbon management plans to be conducted for you. To give a bit of context with our project, we're actually completing 150 farm plans over the project duration. We're at 120 at the moment. It doesn't take long. It's usually a scheduled meeting, either online or face-to-face on farm, for about 2 hours, and we can undertake that greenhouse gas audit for your property. So I'll leave it over to you, Chief, if there's any questions.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Lisa and Marja, for taking us through this. We really appreciate your time, and I think I've gained a lot of knowledge on this session as well. So thank you for taking the time. We might open up this time for questions. Please feel free to pop it in the chat or raise your hand and come in. We would also be posting a survey link now in the chat as well. Please feel free to take the time to fill out the surveys for us. It will help us see how we might deliver this event in the future. And as I mentioned earlier, this was a collaboration event planned between us, LLS, and On-Farm Carbon Advice team. So this is one of the numerous services we offer within the Natural Capital Supporting Services team. where we provide one-on-one advice, events, and things like this, tailored advice as well. So please feel free to reach out to us as well. And we can also make the referrals to On-Farm Carbon Advice team as well. So we'll open it up now for questions and answers. Yeah, over to you. Yeah, I might open it up. I think, Lisa, you mentioned that, but I will usually get this question from landholders where the data goes, like in terms of data privacy and the like. So if you might be able to throw more light on this, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Look, we recognise that data privacy is really important for landholders, and so that's why we engage with farmers to sign up themselves, and then they permission-based that we have access. I would suggest they do that with any consultant or any other enterprise that they're dealing with, so then they always own their data. This platform has been developed by a non-for-profit, and they've actually been supported funding from a lot of the RDC, so the Research Development Corporation. So they've helped fund the build out of this platform. There will be a lot more, I guess, development with the existing with this platform for integration into other software that farmers potentially use on farm. So that will be coming through probably in the next 6 months. But at the moment, the navigation of using this tool is really simple, and I guess it's user friendly, and I guess it's just a starting point that farmers can use and know that their data is secure and they own that data, and it's from a non-for-profit that's been supported by industry. So
thanks, Lisa. Thank you. Any other questions for Lisa and Marja? Oh, well, I think I might ask one more since, I know that there are a lot of tools out there, numerous number of them to count, but I was curious to know, like, what differentiates this tool from every other tool, and like, how would a landholder that wants to start this journey make a decision to select a particular tool or this one rather than others out there? Yeah.
I'll let Marja answer this one because she has been analysing them. I guess at the end of the day, they're all built on the same framework. Or we like to think they're built on the same framework. But Marja, over to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so why you'd go choose which tool? Yeah, important to look at the framework that it's built on. So like Lisa said, this one's based on the relevant equations, and it's based on, so it's got a technical panel that sits on sort of as part of the development of this tool, which helps for if there are any updates made. So the technical panel will feed that through. That ensures that this tool is maintained and updated accordingly. So good reason to use this tool. Like it's supported by the major RDCs, which also is important, I think, why you would want to choose it. It's an online free accessible tool, so it's probably another pro. Also, it's like if you're a mixed farmer, you've got all your different commodities in there, so you don't have to have, like previously when we had, so this is based on the GAF spreadsheets, so it's the online version of that. So in the spreadsheet systems, you had like a spreadsheet for your extensive livestock, and then you had a separate spreadsheet for grains. So in this case, it all sits in the one space. So that's good, move forward. You can also do some, let's say if you want to do some testing, let's say you might want to change something in your management, so you could use the tool like that as well.
Thanks, Marja.
There's a question in the chat from Dominic. In addition to the tree and shelter belts, etc., can soil carbon balances be incorporated?
So soil carbon sequestration is not built into the current calculators. It's probably because it's sort of long-term and there's fluctuation, and in terms of it probably, you know, also needs a known base, what your which is usually you get your information from soil samples. So it's, yeah, answer is it's not built into the calculator. Why they've used probably built in the vegetation sequestration from vegetation is because it's sort of like a long-term storage and fluctuates probably less as what potentially happens in the soil system, and unless maybe there's a wildfire coming through, but so yeah, so not included in the current calculators.
But just to add to that, so we use the EAP tool and then we actually incorporate that into our farm carbon management plans, and that's where we actually provide scenarios for the landholder what potential soil veg activities they might do to increase the sequestration on farm. So that's purely scenario planning type work, and it just shows the difference within the numbers even with those two different activities. So it's sort of a learning tool, but what's possible.
Good. Any more questions? Raise of hand. I think we've just got a new. Okay, yeah, it's just Tom responding to that. Any more questions? It's probably a good thing, Lisa and Maya, that we're not getting much questions, because it seems like it's well internalized by everyone. So we want to take this opportunity to thank you and Maya for your time on this, and also Melanie and Larissa, who are also joining us, and to you all participants for making our time to be with us today. Please take out the time to complete the surveys for us. It will help us improve this next year, and we're hoping to do a face-to-face timing as well for farmers. Yes, please. Yeah, and that would be a wrap-up for us today. We're getting an early mark, so you get 7 minutes back to your time today. So thank you all for being with us today, and do have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.